Ethan Cole had always been a hard-working man, but life had recently tested him in ways he never imagined. He was a single father, raising his 8-year-old son, Mason, in a small town that hugged the banks of a wide river. Once, Ethan had worked in construction, building homes and bridges. The work had been steady, the pay enough to keep a small family comfortable, but that all changed when the company he worked for suddenly shut down. Layoffs came quickly, and Ethan found himself without a job, watching bills pile up on the kitchen table and rent notices that seemed impossible to pay. Despite all this, he never let Mason see his fear. Every morning, he would pack his son's lunch with a smile, brush his hair, and whisper, "We'll make it through, buddy. Just keep believing." The small town had seen rain before, but that spring was different. The sky stayed gray for days, and the river swelled with every passing hour. Street after street began to flood, and the local weather service warned everyone to evacuate. Some residents left immediately, boarding cars and trucks, taking only what they could carry. But Ethan stayed behind, not because he was careless, but because he had neighbors who could not move fast on their own. His elderly neighbor, Mr. Hill, had lived alone for decades and could barely walk without support. Ethan knew he had to help him, even if it meant facing the rising water that night. The rain was relentless. Ethan and Mason watched from the small porch of their house on a hill as the streets below began to disappear under a torrent of rushing water. It was a strange mix of fear and awe to see the river spill over its banks, carrying with it the debris of a quiet town. Mason clutched his father's arm, shivering, not from cold, but from worry. Ethan reassured him with a hand on his shoulder. "Stay calm, Mason. We'll get through this," he said. Deep down, he hoped he was right. Ethan put on his old raincoat and boots, which were already soaked from earlier trips outside, and headed down toward Mr. Hill's house. The water reached his waist by the time he arrived. The current was strong, and the night was filled with the sound of rushing water, wind, and distant thunder. He helped Mr. Hill into a makeshift raft, steadying him as best he could. The man clutched a blanket tightly, his eyes wide but trusting. "Thank you, Ethan," Mr. Hill whispered. Ethan just nodded, focusing on every step to keep them safe. As they reached higher ground, Ethan noticed headlights flickering through the heavy rain. A car was trapped near the old bridge at the edge of town, partially submerged, water rising around it quickly. The woman inside pounded on the glass, her face pale with fear. Without thinking twice, Ethan ran toward the car through the waist-deep water, holding onto a fence for support. Mason's voice echoed from behind him. "Dad, be careful." But Ethan's mind was focused on the woman. Every second counted. The car was nearly swept away by the current, and Ethan grabbed a nearby rock, breaking the side window. He reached in, pulling the woman out. Her name was Claire, and she was coughing and shivering, her clothes soaked and clinging to her. The water pulled at Ethan's legs as he fought to carry her to safety. His arms ached, his boots struggled to grip the muddy riverbed, but he did not falter. Step by step, he pressed forward, until finally, the rushing water slowed, and they reached dry land. Claire collapsed, gasping for air, her teeth chattering. Ethan dropped to his knees beside her, wrapping a dry blanket around her shoulders. "You're safe now," he said, though even he was shaking from the cold and the effort. Mason ran up, eyes wide, unsure whether to cry or cheer. Ethan put a hand on his son's shoulder. "It's okay, Mason, she's safe." By the next morning, news spread quickly through the town. Reporters arrived at Ethan's small home, cameras and microphones pointing at him. "You're a hero," one reporter shouted, but Ethan waved them off. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired, wet, and worried about how he would make ends meet. "I just did what anyone would do," he muttered quietly, avoiding the cameras. Claire was taken to the local shelter, still dazed but alive. thanks to Ethan's quick thinking. She never mentioned her background at the time, simply thanking Ethan repeatedly and promising to repay him someday. But she left quietly, without fanfare, leaving Ethan to return to his everyday struggles. Those days were hard. Ethan's truck broke down frequently, forcing him to walk miles to the grocery store. His roof leaked from the endless rain, and the electric company had already cut off power for unpaid bills. Mason tried to cheer him up, drawing pictures of his father rescuing people from floods. "You're the best hero ever, Dad," he said one evening, showing Ethan a drawing of himself carrying Claire through the water. Ethan smiled weakly, but the reality of their situation pressed down on him. Heroism, he thought, did not fill the stomach or pay the rent. Even in the quiet moments, Ethan kept thinking of the woman he saved. He wondered where she had gone, whether she had found safety, and if she had any family waiting for her. He did not realize that Claire had a life much different from anyone in the town. She had disappeared quietly after the shelter, determined to find a way to repay him for the courage and selflessness he had shown. On the third day after the flood, Ethan was repairing his old truck, trying to make it drivable again, when a loud sound cut through the air. It was not thunder, but the roar of engines far above. He looked up, startled, as a sleek private jet circled the town before landing on the nearby small airfield. Mason ran inside, eyes wide, shouting, "Dad, look, a jet. It's landing right here." Ethan squinted through the rain, unsure what he was seeing. He had never seen anything like it in their town, not even on television. People began gathering at the airfield, whispering and pointing at the unusual sight. The jet was shiny, modern, and clearly not part of any local airline. As Ethan watched, a group of people in dark suits stepped out, followed by a woman who stood out immediately. She walked with confidence, her hair dry and neatly styled despite the storm. It was Claire, the woman he had rescued. She had arrived in a way that seemed impossible, and yet here she was. Ethan felt a mix of disbelief and curiosity. How did she find him? Why did she come here? Mason tugged at his sleeve, eyes shining with excitement. Ethan bent down and whispered, "I don't know, buddy. Let's just wait and see." Claire moved toward them, smiling warmly through the rain. The crowd parted, and the jet doors closed behind her. Everyone at the airfield was silent, sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. Ethan felt his heart race. He had only acted out of instinct, without expecting anything in return, and now, the woman he saved had returned in a way he could never have imagined. The wind whipped around them, and Ethan wrapped Mason in his coat, holding him close. He realized in that moment that life had a way of surprising people when they least expected it. The flood had been terrifying, but it had also led to a chain of events that might change his life forever. As Claire approached, Ethan felt a mix of anticipation, hope, and disbelief. The struggle and hardship of the past weeks seemed small compared to the moment unfolding before him. Ethan did not know that this encounter would open doors he had only dreamed about. For now, he stood in the rain, holding Mason's hand, watching as the woman he had helped approach with determination, ready to deliver a message that could transform their lives forever. The town looked on in awe as the scene unfolded, completely unaware that the simple act of kindness and courage by one struggling dad was about to set the stage for an unbelievable turn of events. Ethan, tired, wet, and unsure, was about to learn that sometimes helping someone in need could bring rewards far beyond anything he had ever imagined. Claire Henderson stepped forward, her eyes calm but focused as she approached Ethan and Mason. The rain had soaked everything around them, but she seemed untouched, her presence commanding attention. Ethan felt a mixture of surprise, disbelief, and curiosity. He had never imagined that the woman he had rescued from the flood could have such a life so confident, so composed, and yet somehow kind. Mason clung to his father's hand, whispering, "Dad, is she really coming for us?" Ethan smiled nervously, unsure of what was about to happen. Claire stopped in front of them, her gaze resting on Ethan first, then on Mason. "Mr. Cole," she said gently, "I've been looking for you." Ethan swallowed, feeling embarrassed under the attention of the small crowd and the cameras that had already begun to arrive. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "I just did what anyone would have done." Claire shook her head, smiling softly. "No, you didn't just do something anyone would do. You risked your life to save mine. That courage, that selflessness, it matters more than you know." She motioned toward the hangar nearby. "Can we talk for a moment?" she asked. Ethan hesitated, glancing at Mason. "Will you be okay here?" he asked. Mason nodded eagerly, eyes shining. "I'll be fine, Dad. Go ahead." With a deep breath, Ethan followed Claire inside. The hum of the jet's engines faded, replaced by the quiet stillness of the hangar inside. Claire finally spoke about herself. She was the CEO of Henderson Global, one of the country's largest tech companies, and the flood that night had caught her completely off guard. She explained that she had been traveling to a nearby facility and that the roads in town had collapsed behind her. "If you hadn't acted so quickly," she said, her voice steady, "I might not have made it." Ethan listened, overwhelmed. He had no idea that the woman he had helped was someone so important. All he had wanted was to save a life. Ethan shared his own story, the struggles of losing his job, keeping Mason safe, and trying to survive in a town where opportunities were few. He told her about the nights of worry, the cold mornings when he walked to the store, and the constant fear that he might not make ends meet. Clara listened carefully, not interrupting, nodding as if she truly understood the weight he carried. Her eyes softened when he spoke about Mason. "Your son is lucky to have you," she said. "Not everyone would fight so hard for someone else, especially someone they barely know." After hours of conversation, Claire finally revealed why she had returned with the private jet. "Ethan, we want to offer you a position at Henderson Global," she said. Ethan blinked, uncertain if he had heard her correctly. "A job?" he asked. Claire nodded. "Not just any job. A role that allows you to use your courage, your quick thinking, and your leadership. We want you to be our safety operations manager. It's a position created specifically for you because of the way you handled the flood." Ethan could hardly believe it. For weeks, he had worried about rent, bills, and Mason's future, and now this? Claire smiled and added, "We've also taken care of a few things to help you get started. Your home, your truck, we've made arrangements to repair and replace what you need so you can focus on your work and your family." Ethan felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. He had never imagined that a simple act of kindness could lead to something so extraordinary. He tried to speak, but his voice caught. I don't know what to say," he stammered. Claire shook her head. "Say yes," she said gently. "Say yes to this opportunity for you and your son." The next day, a team from Henderson Global arrived in town. Workers repaired the roof of Ethan's small house, painted the walls, and installed new appliances. Mason watched in awe as the leaky old kitchen transformed into a bright, clean space. Ethan's old truck was replaced with a newer model, reliable and safe. It felt surreal to him, the way everything in his life seemed to shift in a single day. When Ethan officially signed the papers for his new position, his hands trembled. The title of Safety Operations Manager carried responsibility, but it also meant security, stability, and hope, a chance to give Mason the life he deserved. Claire watched him sign, her eyes warm. "You earned this, Ethan. You risked everything to save a life, and you never asked for anything in return." That is the kind of person we want in our company. Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. He thought of the night of the flood, the fear, the water, and the relief he felt when Claire was safe. That single night had changed everything. As weeks passed, Ethan adjusted to his new role. Henderson Global provided training, support, and resources that made him feel confident. Mason attended a better school and made new friends, enjoying a sense of normalcy that had been missing for so long. The story of Ethan's courage spread online, reaching thousands of people who shared and celebrated the tale. But Ethan never saw himself as a hero. He often told Mason, "I just did what any dad would do if someone needed help." Months later, Claire returned to town, this time bringing a special surprise. She presented Mason's drawing from the flood night, framed and displayed in the company's main lobby. The picture, showing Ethan carrying her through the water, had become a symbol of courage and selflessness. "This," Claire said, "is how we remember real heroes. Not for fame or money, but for their heart." Ethan stood there speechless, tears filling his eyes as Mason hugged him tightly. "Told you, Dad," Mason whispered. "You really are a hero." The private jet that had once landed in their small town had brought more than just opportunities. It had brought recognition, stability, and a sense of hope that Ethan had longed for. But the greatest reward for him was not the money, the job, or the attention. It was seeing Mason safe, happy, and inspired by his father's example. It was knowing that courage and kindness could ripple through lives in ways no one could predict. Even as the months turned into a year, Ethan never forgot that night. He still rose early with Mason, packed his lunches, and reminded him to keep believing. But now, his belief was backed by experience, by a proof that sometimes doing the right thing, even when it seems small or unnoticed, can bring unimaginable change. Claire and Henderson Global remained close, often checking in on Ethan and Mason, supporting them in ways that went beyond employment. They visited the small town, participated in community events, and made efforts to help other residents prepare for future storms. Ethan, once struggling to survive, became a pillar in his community, sharing his story to encourage others to act with courage and compassion. One autumn afternoon, as Ethan watched Mason play in the yard of their repaired home, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The flood had tested him, challenged him, and almost overwhelmed him. Yet it had also revealed the strength he carried inside. More importantly, it had shown him that a single act of selflessness could change lives, sometimes, in ways he could never have imagined. Mason ran to him, holding a new drawing, and Ethan knelt down to take it. "This one's for the jet, Dad," Mason said with a grin. Ethan laughed, feeling the warmth of pride and joy that had been missing for so long. Together, they looked up at the sky, imagining the jet flying far away, carrying Claire and her team, yet always connected to the life-changing night that had brought them here. The memory of the flood, once terrifying and chaotic, had transformed into a story of hope, courage, and new beginnings. Ethan realized that life's challenges, no matter how overwhelming, could lead to the most extraordinary opportunities. And for him and Mason, that realization would stay with them forever, shaping the man and son they were becoming. Bonded not only by love, but by a shared understanding of the power of kindness, Ethan's journey from struggling father to recognized hero was a reminder to all who heard it. Courage, selflessness, and belief in doing what is right could ripple out and touch lives in ways no one could plan or imagine. And sometimes, just sometimes, those ripples could bring a private jet, a new job, and a life full of hope, turning what seemed like a single impossible night into a lifetime of extraordinary change.